And in 3, 2, 1.
You are now listening to the Lapsed Graps podcast.
Hello and welcome to the first ever episode 16 of Lapsed Graps, a podcast where I, Sam, a person who watches pro wrestling, sit down with my friend
Jim, who doesn't?
and we discuss the wacky week that was in professional wrestling. Now, getting started with the news. This is a big one because of things that happened last week that we didn't go over because we were doing our Wrestle Kingdom episode. But Drew McIntyre has announced that he tested positive for COVID-19 and he may miss the Royal Rumble. This is important because last Monday's episode of Raw was a reunion episode with the legends. So you had Ric Flair in there, no mask. You had Hulk Hogan in there, no mask. You had all of these legends that are upwards of 75, 80 years old at this point in the ring with Drew McIntyre, no mask, no social distancing, anything like that. Now, when we get down to Raw, Ric Flair is still very much active on Raw right now, so it doesn't seem like he's sick. I haven't heard anything about Hulk Hogan coming down with anything. Right now, it looks like it was just Drew McIntyre. He got sick. We don't know if it came from, well, it probably didn't come from Raw just because of the timing. It takes about a week for you to start showing symptoms if you're going to start showing symptoms. But he might be out for the Royal Rumble depending on how affected by his symptoms he becomes and if he's able to get back. So we might not get the Goldberg Drew McIntyre match that everybody was hoping for at Royal Rumble.
Wait, was that a thing? Him versus
Yes,
Goldberg?
that happened last week. During the return episode, Goldberg showed up and challenged Drew McIntyre for the WWE Championship at Royal Rumble since the champion doesn't compete in the Rumble. You missed a lot last week with us covering Wrestle Kingdom.
I can tell. That's a lot to unpack there. Well, I guess I'll start with the most important thing. Wishing Drew McIntyre a speedy recovery. That really sucks for him, man. But hopefully, again, speedy recovery. He's back. If he's not going to be back before the Rumble, then hopefully he's back and healthy right after it. Him versus Goldberg. That's first off troubling because the last time Goldberg was in the World Title match, he beat the Fiend. I think he was the first person to beat the Fiend for his World Title.
Yeah,
I
he was
think
the first clean pin the Fiend suffered to
that
Bill
was
Goldberg.
yeah, that
Oh Lord.
was bad, very bad. And I'm already not a fan that they had Drew lose it for like a week against Orton in like October, November, whenever Hell in a Cell was. So I'm hoping they don't do exactly what they did this time last year by having Goldberg win the belt right before Mania, but time will tell. Right now, more important pressing matters are at hand with his health, so wishing him the best of luck there. Hopefully, we don't say new WWE champion Goldberg when he comes back, but time will tell.
Yeah, hopefully it's not a situation where he's going to have to relinquish the belt and then Goldberg is going to get it by default. They do go into that a little bit on Raw. So Raw opens up with Triple H in the ring. He made his big Raw return, and he's talking about Drew McIntyre's illness and the fact that Drew McIntyre is sick and is not going to be able to compete this week. Now, that's a big deal because Randy Orton had a title shot this week on Raw. So Randy comes down and he's pissed. He's saying that that's ridiculous and, you should just give me the title now. If Drew can't compete, he can't defend his belt. It's my title. I get it. I win it fair and square. So instead, Triple H says that if Randy Orton can win the Royal Rumble, he'll get a title shot at the world title because he'll have won the Royal Rumble, and that's what the male winner gets for winning the Royal Rumble is a title shot. Randy counters that by saying, okay, put me in at number 30 so it's fair. Triple H says, I'm sorry, I'm not in charge of who gets put where, which is crap because he is, which makes it hilarious. I love angry heel boss trips and just angry Randy just butting heads because they were so close in that faction with Ric Flair and with Batista. They were right there. They were really tight, and then they kind of drifted apart. And now it's just Trips just being like, shut up and let me do my job. And Randy being like, no, you don't remember. Da, 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 da. I've been here for years. I worked hard. And he's like, yeah, I do remember. You were in my back seat for most of it. Shut up and let me do my job. It's great.
Yeah, that actually sounds like a really fun segment, and I really like the motivation there. Like, I think the Royal Rumble is always at its most fun where you just have when you highlight every wrestler's motivations beyond just I want to win the Rumble, I want to go Mania. You tell a story that people either want to get behind or are intrigued by. Now you're setting up Orton as potentially one of the favorites to go in and win it. And if not to win it, then there's at least a story there to come out. Like what's a good example? Shawn Michaels when he went to the Royal Rumble,
or Ric Flair when he went in as number one and then won the whole thing.
Oh yeah, that's a good one too. I was
That was
thinking
what,
about
96 or 97 when he won the entire thing?
90.
No, it was earlier than that. It was 92 maybe.
I think you're right. I think 92. While you check that, when I say like people like winning with like story driven motivation, or like the first one that comes to mind is Shawn Michaels last year as an active wrestler, like beyond just winning the Rumble to go WrestleMania, he won a rematch with The Undertaker, but The Undertaker would say, because I'm World Heavyweight Champion, the only way you're going to get a Mania rematch with me is if you win the Rumble and then challenge me for the belt. So for weeks, Michaels has this obsessive, character-driven story where he wants to go in the Rumble, clean house, get his match with Taker, doesn't get, and then you get even more obsessive Michaels, not just post elimination, but in the weeks after, just trying to get his match with Taker. I think you get really cool story driven potential there, like whether this person wins or not. Like I think if Orton, even if he doesn't win, he's still gonna be obsessive and driven and wants his match with Drew McIntyre, especially now that he knows that he can beat Drew for the title. So I'm very curious to see how this turns out.
Absolutely. And it was Royal Rumble 92 in the Knickerbocker Arena in Albany, New York. So that was the first Royal Rumble too, if I'm remembering my history right. The first one that was labeled the Royal Rumble. I know it was the first Royal Rumble pay-per-view. I don't know if it was the first Royal Rumble that the WWF ever did though.
I think it might have been the first Rumble that like mattered because like I think there were like at least 4 or 5 before that, one by Hogan, one by Hacksaw Jim Duggan, but they were just battle royals that people just happened to win. This was the one
Gotcha.
where it was actually like, hey, this
The
is for
Rumble.
the what was that?
This was the one that was like, this is the Rumble.
Yeah, exactly.
And then
Well,
also that was for the Double Eagle Championship because didn't he come in, win, and then he was given the title at the end?
yep, it was the first Rumble for the with the belt was on the line, and from then on, that's when it kind of I think it might have been the year after that. The stipulation was that if you want to win the Rumble, you get the main event slot at WrestleMania. So this was like the first high stakes Rumble, I think.
Gotcha. Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, no, I agree. It'll be interesting to see where they take that story and how they do it. You know, as much crap as I like to give WWE for their stories, the Rumble is one that they always seem to be able to do well. I mean, last year you had Edge's return, you had Brock Lesnar running through that first half of the Rumble basically by himself and then getting taken out by Ricochet and Drew McIntyre, which a lot of people remember Drew eliminating him. Not a lot of people remember that it was Ricochet's low blow that allowed Drew to eliminate him. And I'm still waiting on that part of the story to pay off. I still want Ricochet to come in cocky as all hell and tell Drew that he wouldn't have been able to get that title shot without him and then have them clash. Because I think Flippy Boy and Big Strong Boy are going to have a great match someday. And I want to see it. I really want to see it. But that's, you know, another tangent for another time. It'll be interesting. A question for you, Jam. Would it be more interesting for you if Randy Orton ends up in the second half of the Rumble or if he's in like the first 5 entrants? So like he wouldn't be number one because they're not going to give Randy Orton a enter at number one and win story. They're just not going to do it. But they're also he's a legend and he's been around long enough. They're not going to just kill this story at the Rumble. You know, with this story, I think he's pretty much the presumed pick to win. So would it be more interesting to you if he comes in the last 5 and just wrecks house on whoever's left, or if he's one of the first 5 in and has to kind of persevere through all of these younger guard to get that title shot at WrestleMania?
That's a good question. I would say second half, because first half you save that spot for someone who you really want to go the distance. That's like the babyface spot, which like you could still have Orton in the babyface spot, but I feel like he's such a high profile name that if you see him early on, you're not thinking, oh, is he gonna outlast everybody? Does he have to persevere? He's already been to mountain so many times. You're already in your mind thinking he's a favorite. So if he comes late, like say one of the last five or even the last entrant, you're kind of thinking, oh, he's coming out this late, he's gonna win, which could open a door to either swerve everybody by having someone eliminate Orton, or swerve everybody by thinking that the obvious actually happens. And sometimes the obvious is what makes sense the most. That's the best decision sometimes.
Absolutely. Now, what'll be interesting is if the rumors that are going around online right now are true, we know who entrant number 30 at the Royal Rumble is. If
Who is that?
everything we've heard is true, entrant number 30 is going to be Jay White, the Switchblade from New Japan Pro Wrestling. Earlier
Didn't we?
this week, there were huge reports from Sean Ross Sapp at Fightful.com, Wrestling Gary, all the big guys in our industry saying that WWE was making a really strong push for Jay White and making a huge push to get him to come to the US and reminding him that they've got Shinsuke over here, they've got Finn Balor over here, they had the Good Brothers, like all of these guys that had built their names in Japan had come over here and reached superstardom in the US. There hasn't been any official word from New Japan, but as of this morning, Jay White's wrestler page has been removed from the New Japan Pro Wrestling website. Now, maybe that's storyline, maybe that's kayfabe, because Gato has never been afraid of using like real life things to enhance the story going forward, and they may just be putting him on the shelf until Dominion in the summer and just letting him pretend like he walked away from New Japan Pro Wrestling. And that might be what they're doing, and that's fine if that's the story, because that's a very cool story. But that leak of WWE making a big push, plus the Royal Rumble, plus his stuff getting pulled off the website, and the fact that the last time a major member of the Bullet Club, a former leader of the Bullet Club, came to the US and premiered for the WWE was in the number 30 spot in the Royal Rumble in 2016 in AJ Styles. I don't know. There's a lot of people online are all in on this theory. A lot of people online are just saying that we're all getting worked by Gato. But, a lot of it makes a lot more sense than it doesn't if you think about it.
It's tough for me to buy into that just because, like, it feels like a kind of, well, let me not say go out of nowhere because I feel like most WWE signs, I guess, come out of nowhere just because you keep them under a tight lip for so long. But like we were just talking about him being in the main event of Wrestle Kingdom, I think you were telling me he had some type of like babyface turn crying segment at the very end.
So the thing that is interesting there is he went out on his back in Wrestle Kingdom, the biggest event in Japanese professional wrestling. He went out on his back, losing the World Heavyweight title and the Intercontinental title. He didn't lose, but he lost his challenge to them. He's held both those titles independently before. So he's reached that top mountain of New Japan Pro Wrestling at like he's 32 years old. The kid's crazy young for a professional wrestler. So my theory on that is while that could just be a story and it could be a babyface turn, like I argued last week with this new information, was he just going out on his back as a tribute to and as a favor to the company that trained him and made him an international superstar and gave him the opportunity to be someone big enough that draws this kind of attention to WWE? Because what do you do when you're leaving a promotion and you're going somewhere new? You go out on your back to not draw away from the stars that they're putting in your place. And it would solve the power vacuum in Bullet Club. It would solve a lot of the issues that Gato's booking is starting to get him into. So I don't think he would put up that much of a fight of letting Jay White leave if Jay White wanted to leave. And at 32 years old, if they're going to offer you $7-8 million to come out there for a year, I don't see how you turn that down. You're going to set your family up for life.
Yeah, I'd get that. And like in theory, him going out on a sword makes a lot of sense, but The reason I'm still hesitant in that regard is because like when I think about the last guy who really went out on their sword on the Bullet Club, you mentioned him earlier, AJ Styles. Like he at Wrestle Kingdom, he lost Shinsuke Nakamura. Then the next night, he not only lost a tag match, but he got basically jumped out of the Bullet Club by everybody, and Kenny Omega was adorned as a new leader. And immediately
And
after the
and then he debuted in the WWE at the Royal Rumble.
true, but in the same regard, AJ Styles, he had like a bowing segment. Like he made it clear that he was leaving. Even if he didn't make it clear he was going to WWE, he bowed to the crowd right after the beatdown and made it clear, okay, this is gonna be the last time you see me in a New Japan ring. So like I would feel like there'd be more, if only like a subtle pomp and circumstance for the current leader of Bullet Club to be leaving, to me at least.
Well, the thing about that is he's not the current leader of Bullet Club. Evil is the de facto leader of Bullet Club right now because he was gone overseas with the lockdown and everything. So there's that. But then there's also at the time that AJ got jumped out of the Bullet Club, by being jumped out, he was de facto given that face turn that allowed him to acknowledge the fans and it allowed him to give the fans that welcoming goodbye. If Jay White goes out on his back as the uber heel that he has been for all these years, he's not going to stop and pay homage to the fans. He's going to go back. He's going to break down in a private segment that'll end up getting broadcast to the internet, and then he'll disappear, which is what he's done.
That does make sense. You're kind of selling me on this now. Like, it's still wild to me just because like again like main event Wrestle Kingdom, he's at the very top. It's shocking to me to think that he'd want to leave, but again, like you said, 8, 7 figures. That's hard to turn down. I don't know if
And it
50
might
feet. I
not
may
even
have
be
to.
the low seven figures. It might be high seven figures. I mean, this guy is that good, and he is young enough and strong enough. He's the. I don't remember if I made this comparison last week or if I made this online on my Twitter account, but he's currently right now his character is Seth Rollins, but he's allowed to curse. So
I
if
buy that.
they're going to bring in someone to fill that Seth Rollins role while Seth's away with Becky and the baby, and then when Seth comes back because he's got a baby, he'll be a de facto babyface because babies are adorable. We saw this happen with Tommaso Ciampa when he came back from his neck surgery, and we saw Willow, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, you're a father. We love you," and all of his heel heat was gone. That's gonna happen here. We all love Becky. We're all gonna love the baby. No one's gonna want to boo Seth. Like, so why work extra hard to make Seth hateable again when you can just bring in Seth from like 4 years ago, who's not going to need a run in NXT because he's been trained by the best trainers in the world, and just let him run wild over professional wrestling?
You know what? That makes such perfect sense. I'm actually gonna give you that one. That makes too much sense for me to. Now I'll be shocked if he doesn't show up in the Royal Rumble. To be honest.
See, that's the only reason I didn't want to bring it up is like if he doesn't show up as number 30 in the Royal Rumble now, I'm going to have to eat my hat. I'm going to have to come up here and be like, I was wrong. I don't know where he's at, but I was wrong. And
Hey,
it probably is just going to be Otis or something, honestly. It'll probably be Otis. He'll come out, he'll do the worm, he'll get knocked out, and that'll suck. But for now, ideally, it could be Jay White showing up in the US for the second time in his career.
honestly, to be fair, even if he doesn't show up in the Royal Rumble, that still sets up a really good swerve by New Japan. If there's all this pomp and circumstance over him leaving WWE, then when you least expect it, he reinserts himself right back in the main event picture. That's either going to be a big moment for New Japan or a big moment for WWE wherever he turns up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But continuing on with Raw. So, speaking of Ric Flair, dirty, dirty old Ric Flair. Ric Flair is in an on-screen relationship with Lacey Evans. This
Excuse
started,
me?
this started last week during the Legends episode. Lacey Evans was flirting with Ric Flair in front of Charlotte, probably just to get Charlotte's goat. But Rick being Rick and Lacey being Lacey, something blossomed there, and it ends up with Charlotte losing to Lacey Evans with the assistance of Ric Flair. So Ric Flair is now helping Lacey Evans beat his daughter on Raw. because presumably backstage they're fucking. I tried. I sat here for a minute and I was like, how am I gonna put this right? But no, they're knocking boots. They're doing the woo. It's. I mean, you know what? Props to Ric Flair, man. The dude is like 86 years old, and Lacey Evans is not a bad-looking woman. And if this is how he wants to finish his WWE career by maybe kind of, sort of, possibly sleeping with her backstage, off camera, and being told to the entire world that, hey, we're sleeping together, then you know what? Fair play to you, man. Do what you want. It's weird to me, but I'm also not old and horny, so I don't know.
There's so much to unpack there.
Yeah.
Well, first off, like one of the things that almost immediately came to mind, like, isn't like Lacey in canon like married? Like we've seen her kid and husband, haven't we? We've definitely seen her kid.
We've met her daughter. I don't know that we've met her husband.
Oh, okay.
I
could
know
be
we've
wrong
met
about the
her
husband.
daughter because her daughter was like the whole reason behind her like face turn. I think last year at the Royal Rumble
Yep.
was she was facing off with, I think,
Bailey.
Becky, or maybe it was Bailey.
Mm-hmm.
And her daughter was there, and she kind of became a face, which is the position she should have been in the whole time because she's a much better face than she is a heel. But yeah, so we've met her daughter. I don't believe we've ever met her husband on screen.
Okay, I could be wrong there, but like in character, okay, like moving on to Ric Flair now. In character, it doesn't even surprise me with Ric Flair. Like maybe the PG thing could like throw people off, but like in character, that's exactly who Ric Flair has been since NWA WCW days. So it doesn't surprise me. Him like switching manager side. Wait, hold on. I just realized when did when did he start like managing Charlotte again? Has that
He
been a
didn't.
thing?
He showed up on the episode last week. They started flirting, and then he showed up again this week and helped her get the pin over Charlotte.
Okay.
So it wasn't a managerial switch or a like changing of the guard or anything. It was, hey, Charlotte's back. She's my daughter. Hey, I'm back. I'm old and gross. Hey, you're really hot and you're blonde and you kind of look a little bit like my daughter but shorter. So that's a little Trumpy, but whatever. And then that went the way that it went.
See, I wasn't sure if I was going to bring that part up, them looking alike, but like it was
Yeah.
definitely in the back of my mind.
It gave very, if Ivanka wasn't my daughter, I'd be hitting on her vibes. At least to me. At least to me it did. Which, with everything going on this week, I was really hoping not to get a little bit of Trump in my wrestling, but they found a way. They certainly found a way.
What do you think the end game is this for? Like,
I think this is going to be a WrestleMania match, and Lacey is going to lose clean, and then Rick and Charlotte are going to make up, and then Charlotte's going to spear her dad, and maybe that'll be the on-screen official retirement of her dad, and her dad won't show up anymore. I think we're going to have that same thing we did when she made her first debut from NXT, where she was Charlotte Flair and she lost all the time, and then she beat the shit out of Rick and dropped her last name and just became Charlotte, and then she became dominant and a world champion 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 and a world champion. I'm not going to do that 10 times, but you get where I'm going with that. And so she gets that evil streak back. I think that's where we're going here, because since her return, she's been babyface Charlotte, which is not good Charlotte. Good Charlotte is, I'm better than you because this is in my blood and I know I'm better than you. So sit down, shut up, and don't even try. Babyface Charlotte and babyface Cody Rhodes don't work because they're not babyfaces IRL. If you need any proof of that, just go look at Charlotte's Twitter feed, because she got into some heated shit this week, and it's insane.
I'll take your word for it there, but like I definitely agree that Charlotte's a better heel than a baby face, and like her first off, like that scenario you painted with like her Syrian Flair, I feel like that would definitely make this storyline worth it, I guess. Like that would make for a fun Mania moment, and like you said, a fun way for Flair to, I guess, walk into the sunset for good this time. And I guess to that note, like, what are the chances that this hypothetical Mania match between Lacey and Charlotte becomes basically a Ric Flair on a pole match?
I think that's where we're going with it, is either Ric Flair on a pole or Ric Flair in a shark cage or something, because the way that they did this, where like Charlotte's backing up into her corner, Ric's grabbing the ankle and ripping it out from under her, and that's allowing Lacey to like pull her in for the pin. They're setting it up that Ric can't be trusted at ringside for either of them. So I'm guessing that it's going to be like a Ric suspended above the cage in a shark cage kind of a thing, and then Charlotte wins, yay! And then Rick comes down, and they have that big, beautiful moment where they hug, and then maybe she'll drop him into like the El Idolo finisher, where like you drop her down, almost like the sling blade, where he drops him down into the arm, since they're dating as well, and does like the flip there, because they've been practicing that move together. So maybe that's how that's going to happen, and that'll be a nod to her relationship backstage and everything like that. And that would be kind of cool. I would like that. And God, please just get Rick off of our screens and somewhere safe. The man almost died from a stroke and was like in a coma for a week, and now we're in a global pandemic, and you're still trotting this dude out, no mask, no PPE, no nothing, to get like kissed on by Lacey Evans. That's weird. Don't know. I don't even need wrestling right now. I definitely don't need like the 80-year-old men who made me interested in wrestling 10, 15 years ago dying because Vince McMahon was greedy.
100% co-sign that, and I guess like to give credit where credit is due, like Rick versus Charlotte, well, not like an actual match, Rick versus Charlotte, but like storyline, character stuff wise.
Hmm.
I actually don't think they've ever gone to that well before. Like they've done like the breakup angle, but if I'm not forgetting anything, Charlotte basically slapped Ric Flair backstage, and Ric Flair disappeared from TV, and then from there Charlotte was on her own again. But I don't think they ever went to that well. So if WWE is at least trying something different, I be in their weird, wacky way, then I guess props them for trying something different. I am with you. We don't necessarily need an 86-year-old man in the ring during a pandemic. That's not cool, but if they're going to do it, I guess at least they're giving us something new.
Yeah, so it looks like the breakup mode angle that you're talking about was 2016, right around the time she debuted up from NXT, when she kind of separated herself from her father. And it doesn't look like that had anything to do with like him backing another wrestler or anything like that. It was just, I can do this on my own. So yeah, you're right there, and it'll be interesting if they do this well. The only issue I have with this story, or this proposed story, if it ends up making it all the way to WrestleMania, is nothing Ric Flair does is ever simple. Nothing he does is ever, here's the story, go do the story, go home. It's always going to have 70 turns when two would have done just fine. And I'm already exhausted thinking about where this thing is going to go, and what horrible, horrible backstage segments we're going to have of like Charlotte walking into a dressing room, and how this is going to get really like 90s Attitude Era, but gross all over again, real fast. And as long as we don't have like another Lita situation, we'll be fine. Let's not get a situation where we have Charlotte walking into a dressing room and Lacey Evans and Rick are in a bed or anything like that. Let's not even go near that. Let's just let it be about the wrestling, and Rick can ride off into the sunset on his limo or whatever. Yeah, yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Absolutely. So that'll bring us over to SmackDown, because those were the only things of note that happened on Raw. The SmackDown opened with a promo from Roman Reigns, basically just tearing Adam Pearce, who's the de facto like figurehead for SmackDown right now, a new one. Saying that he's been unfairly putting uh, putting Roman and Jay in matches and not being like fair with his booking and anything like that. So he went over his head and got Adam Pearce put into a match to qualify for a chance at the Universal title at Royal Rumble. So basically, if Adam Pearce wants to put him in so many matches to maybe lose his Universal title, why doesn't Adam just try and come and take it himself? But first he has to qualify. Speaking of qualifying for a match at Royal Rumble for the Universal title, Adam Pearce defeats Rey Mysterio, Sami Zayn, King Corbin, Daniel Bryan, and Shinsuke Nakamura to earn a Universal title shot at the Royal Rumble.
Is this like a gauntlet?
Yeah, it was a like a scramble thing. It was like a 6-man tag, but not, because they were all legal and the first pin won. And it was a great match until you started seeing Adam in there, and it was like, oh, you're just sort of taking up space and counting the movements in your head. And okay, now you're pinning. Oh, okay, cool. You got your point. And like, he was a very talented indie wrestler in his day. Ring of Honor, Impact. We talked all about it when he became the on-screen presence. It's just, it was pretty clear in this one that he has not been active in a ring in a lot of years. And it's going to be a squash at Royal Rumble. Maybe by us all just kind of sitting here and saying, of course it's going to be a squash. It'll be like a Michael Cole, Jerry the King Lawler situation, and it won't be a squash, and he'll win, and he'll be the Universal Champion. But I don't see that happening, especially since, Roman Reigns isn't 65 and doesn't have diabetes. So I don't get what they're doing here. If this is a way to like write Adam Pearce off TV, they could just pretend they don't have general managers anymore, like they do every 6 months when they get bored of these stories. I don't know what the point of giving him a Universal title shot at the Royal Rumble is.
From the sounds of it, the way I read it, it's either, well, like you said, it could be just a ram off, but for some reason, like in my head, it read to me as kind of like, maybe it's like his way of, I guess, having his flowers as like the de facto producer, not producer, but general manager since whenever the pandemic started. Because I think when we just started doing this podcast in
I think it might have been
July,
episode 1
August.
we talked about Adam Pearce.
Yeah, so he's probably been doing this on-screen role since like July, August, and this basically his first major wrestling television role ever, even considering his stuff as a wrestler in NWA. So like him being on a big stage, having that spotlight, and knowing what type of wrestler he was, but never had that spotlight before he retired. My only guess is that this could be like him, like them giving him like one big Hall of Fame moments to like either ride into the sunset or just have that moment to his resume before he just walks away from the business altogether.
Mm-hmm.
But like giving his opponent to Roman Reigns kind of makes me both confused and curious as to where it could go, because the main thing I could think is squash, but obviously like it's not really giving someone their flowers if you just put them in the ring to squash them. So the only thing I can think is he uses that old 2000s NWA expertise to have like a legit match with Roman Reigns. But even then, like I don't know how that would read to like an average audience. Like to us, we know what he was doing in early 2000s, late 2000s as NWA champion for X amount of years.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, like even with that context of knowing he has that experience, he hasn't had that experience in about 10, 15 years since he's wrestled. I don't know if 65-year-old Adam Pearce can have a legit entertaining match with 30, 35-year-old Roman Reigns. Either way, there's like a big discrepancy there is what I'm saying.
And I get what you're saying, and that's a thing that I also had to be like, okay, this could be a good match, and then I had to like stop and like, no, this is the WWE, and it's for like 10-year-olds. It's not going to be a good match because none of them know that he is good at all. Like none of these people that are watching that they're aiming for, none of the like young kids that they're always aiming to bring into wrestling have any idea that he was in PWG, that he was in the NWA, that he did anything that he did. And Adam Pearce is actually, where did his age go? He is 42, not 65.
Oh, okay.
So he's a little bit younger than you thought he was. But yeah, no, it's one of those where you sit there and you're like, oh, Adam Pearce and Roman Reigns, like if Adam's been able to like go to the performance center and like work on his stuff and get the ring rust off, this could actually be really, really good because he was great in PWG in the early days. He was great in the NWA when he was there. But again, then you remember that the WWE isn't for you and me. It's for the 10 and 11-year-olds that are in like sixth grade and just allowed to start putting whatever they want on the cable box to record. And, you realize that he's just going to get destroyed.
Yeah, to piggyback off that, it seems like a lose-lose thing because if he just gets squashed, then it's kind of like, well, what's the point? But if he doesn't get squashed and has a legit moment, then it's
That kills all
how's
your momentum for Roman Reigns.
exactly like how does that make Roman Reigns look if he beats Braun, Bray, and Jey Uso within an inch of their life in under 5 minutes? But then you've got 42-year-old Adam Pearce, who's never even wrestled in about 10, 15 years, giving him the flux on the second biggest pay-per-view of the year.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's not going to be a good match. You hope it will be. It's not going to be. It was just so weird. More so the guys that they fed to Adam Pearce was so weird. Because it was, again, Rey Mysterio, legend. Sami Zayn, going to be a legend. King Corbin, I don't like him, but I don't like him because he's a bad guy and I'm supposed to like him. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. Daniel Bryan, Hall of Famer. Shinsuke Nakamura, Hall of Famer. And they all got fed to Adam Pearce, who, up until this moment on WWE TV, is a geek and a suit. Doesn't have any wrestling experience in kayfabe. So the fact that these guys got fed to him was a super weird decision that I don't know if it was a punishment thing or what was going on there, but that just felt weird and it may come back and like play into the Royal Rumble match, but I don't see how it can.
Wait, so now I've got two questions. One, like, did he pin all of them in the scramble? And two, like, was it like it's actually not even they haven't even mentioned like his wrestling history then?
No, so okay, so here's my admission. I watch Raw with the sound off because I can't stand at Raw commentary. I can't do it. So I don't know that his wrestling acumen has ever been mentioned, and even if it has, it might just be that he's a veteran of the business because they're never going to name drop NWA or PWG or the Indies. They wouldn't do that because WWE is the only show in town. As for who did he pin? Oh Lord. Okay, so hi, my name's Sam. This is an insert because life sucks, and I watch Raw, but apparently I don't watch Raw very closely. Because what I said earlier, when it was a just scramble and everyone was in the ring, that's not what happened. It was a big, long gauntlet match that ended with Mr. Pierce facing off with a young Mr. Shinsuke Nakamura. Jey Uso comes down to the ring, super kicks Nakamura unconscious, and then throws Pierce's unconscious body over Nakamura for the 3 count. 1, 2, 3. Pierce wins and gets the title shot at the Royal Rumble. So there's a whole bunch of bullshit, and I just apparently completely blacked out. Sorry about that. And back to the episode. So yeah, that's how that went. Yeah. I don't know if you're going to use any of that audio, but I did it, so screw it.
Oh, I'm going to use all of it. But
Ah,
to
damn it.
to your credit, to your credit, like that does sound like a lot of bullshit to keep up with. So I don't blame you for forgetting. And
Dude, it's
that
40 hours a week. Oh, I sign up for it, but it's 40 hours a week, and at least 10 of them suck.
it's all right. But yeah, like that adds a more interesting facet to it to me. Like first off, I'm surprised they had Nakamura like outlast the distance to like go to like second to last. That's good for him. He hasn't done
Mhm.
anything like main event worthy, I don't think, since his program with Gender, maybe, unless I'm forgetting something big, but that's big for him. But for Jey Uso to,
I mean,
I
was
guess on,
Jinder after the AJ versus Shinsuke stuff? Because I feel like Jinder's been injured for like 3 years.
yeah, that's what I was thinking when Gender was a WWE champion.
Yeah, I think that was before the AJ Shinsuke, who is the actual like OG thing, like their WrestleMania match.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? In that case, then I was wrong. Then he had thing with AJ Styles after that. Then so like he lost to Jinder for like maybe two pay-per-view straight. He definitely lost him at SummerSlam, and then after AJ won it, he lost to AJ at WrestleMania, and then I think maybe two or three more pay-per-views after that, if I'm not mistaken.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah,
But then,
I don't know. That's I have so much inane wrestling shit in my head. I can't tell you what Jinder Mahal did during his career.
I don't blame you, but like in any case, that means Shinsuke hasn't done anything significant in like 2, 3 years. So maybe that means they've got plans for him, maybe not. But the bigger point to that is that for Roman Reigns to have Jey Uso basically out lay out Shinsuke Nakamura to confirm that Adam Pearce match, that's a more interesting facet to it because now it's seeming more and more likely that we're getting a squash at the Rumble. Like this is Roman Reigns' way of saying, I want to destroy you and I'm going to destroy you, and here's me guaranteeing I get to destroy you at the Royal Rumble. I can imagine Roman Reigns basically playing with his food, if that makes sense. Like basically, he's got several times to get the pin, but every time he's lifting Adam Pearce's shoulder up, spearing Adam Pearce first 5 seconds of the match. Instead of going for the pin, he's just beating him up for the next 10, 15 minutes nonstop until they can get as close as they can to a bloody pulp because, PG, we can't get bloody pulp. But if he's just beating the crap out of Adam Pearce, and then maybe Adam Pearce gets like a lucky shine or two, but ultimately Roman Reigns wins, then that could be a way of either writing Pierce out or just getting people to like him, which it's it seems like that's what I'm thinking could happen. That's very fancy booking to me, I guess, but that's what I'm envisioning.
That's entirely fair. My only counter argument is I don't want to watch Roman have Brock Lesnar matches. Like we've already given him Brock Lesnar's advocate. We've already given him Brock Lesnar's spot on SmackDown. I don't want to watch him have Brock Lesnar matches now. I don't have any interest in that kind of stuff. Like if you're gonna get in the ring, I want someone to get in the ring who's gonna challenge you. I want uh, you know, Ricky Steamboat versus Harley Race every time people are in the ring. I don't want to watch, you know, oh, I'm just gonna destroy you and you're gonna have to be okay with it. Like I don't need Daniel Bryan versus Brock Lesnar every time. That's not what I find entertaining. If other people find it entertaining, which obviously someone does because they keep doing it, more power to you.
That's fair. And I guess I guess that's why there's a fast forward button, thankfully.
Yeah, not on pay-per-views, but yeah.
Oh yeah, of course.
All right, so that brings us to the Intercontinental Championship match, which I did actually pay full attention to. Thank you very much. Big E, who is the current Intercontinental Champion, defeats Apollo Crews via pinfall to retain the championship. This was my favorite match of the week until I watched NXT UK about 10 minutes before we got on this call. Walter and A-Kid from Spain had an insane match for the WWE Championship, UK Championship, that we don't actually cover at all during this episode. But if you watch one thing this week, go watch that match. It's insane. It's so good. I guess the only real thing to say here is I'm happy for Big E. He's getting that big singles push that he deserves. He's got the title, and he doesn't seem to be letting go of it. He's really making something of this singles opportunity they've given him, and I'm happy to see him finally get this shot.
That's what's up. I'm glad. And hmm, I don't have anything beyond that to say because I guess it's easier for me to react to story-driven stuff than a match I haven't seen. But I guess to that point, I should also say that not only am I glad that Big E's kind of getting his just due and his IC belt run is off to a swell start, it I'm guessing that him getting a title shot also means Apollo Crews is getting a good push, which I'm always been on the Apollo train. I'm very much an Apollo guy, so I'm just glad that he's getting an opportunity.
Yeah, no, Apollo seems to have been doing really well in recent weeks as well, and the nature of this match was that it didn't really do any harm to Apollo. to lose this match. Like, this was a hard-hitting, solid match. It wasn't a Big E steps in the ring and Apollo just lays down kind of situation. So I think they're really building a pretty good program there for Big E and for Apollo. And if Big E ends up being the one who wins the Rumble, which I've seen going around a lot as well, that they want him to win the Rumble and then challenge Roman at WrestleMania, so we get the Roman Big E like match. That would be really cool and something that I would really like to see.
Oh, same here. I love my big guy. So if they can have a big mean guy match for WrestleMania, I'm all for it.
Absolutely. And that'll actually take us over to NXT, where it's Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic time. This is unironically my favorite time of the year for NXT. I love tag team wrestling. I love tag team tournament wrestling. The NWA Crockett Cup is one of my favorite events that they've only done once since their reboot, and it makes me sad. But this was a great night of wrestling there. So we had the Grizzled Young Veterans who have made the switch from NXT UK to NXT full time, facing off against a newer team in Everrise. Everrise is really, really talented. The Grizzled Young Veterans are really, really talented. Grizzled Young Veterans come out with the win. I love these guys, man. I'm really happy that they've been able to escape's the wrong word, but move away from the NXT UK of it all and get themselves in front of a large audience and an audience who is going to be there every week and see what they can do and see what they're able to bring to the ring. So I'm really happy. I hope they have a long run in this tournament.
Oh, same here. Especially since, like, if I remember correctly, Grizzled Young Veterans was supposed to come in like right before the pandemic hit, but because the pandemic hit and they were overseas, it kind of stalled their NXT TV debut a little bit.
Hmm.
So with the fact they're now back into the full swing of things and they're there full time, I'm very much glad because they were when I was regularly watching, they were always two of my favorite tag teams. They put on some amazing matches in NXT UK, and Zach Gibson by himself was putting on some of the best heel work you could see on this or any side of a wrestling ring. So the fact they could do it for a bigger audience on national TV, I'm all for it. Happy for him.
Absolutely. Now, as for Everrise, did you have any experience with them on the indie scene? They were known as 3.0.
Now on the
Team
indie scene,
3.0. So they were Ring of
by
Honor, Chikara, and PWG.
okay, I haven't seen any of their indie work, but I do remember the name. They've worked, I think it was mostly just squash matches in NXT like earlier this year, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So they came in and got their asses handed to them for quite a bit of time on NXT TV, and then handed quite a few people their asses as well. But yeah, so they're Combat Zone Wrestling, Ring of Honor tag team champions, Pro Wrestling Guerrilla tag team champions, and yeah, so they're a storied team. They've been together as tag team specialists since 2006, and it's just always a good time to see two guys that have just been on the road for almost a decade get their shot, well, over a decade, 2006, and really just capitalize on it and run away with it.
Nice. I didn't know they had like a pedigree like that. I was never familiar with like their indie work. I didn't even know they had indie work. They were such like fresh faces I've never seen or heard of. I just assumed they were two of their NXT homegrown talents, but to find out they've been doing it for a decade and now they're getting their due, then shout out to them.
Absolutely. So continuing on, we had another match in the Tag Team Classic. This one saw Isaiah Swerve Scott and Jake Atlas taking on the mystery team of MSK. Now, MSK was a team that was announced to be in this tournament last week, but there was no like face plates. There was no introduction to them. It was just MSK is coming. They will be in the tournament. There was no indication of who it was going to be. Obviously, if you're on the internet for more than 20 minutes, you know who MSK is going to be. It's Des and Wentz from the Rascalz in Impact Wrestling. They make their NXT debuts. This was a clinic of tag team wrestling. Scott and Atlas don't get along in kayfabe, but man, do they work well together in the ring. This was such a good match, and it was really, really cool to see Des and Wentz kind of show up and show out and like really say, this is why we are here in the WWE. This is why we are the best team in the world. I don't care who you are, what you say, what you think. This is what we do, and this is what we do well. It was really, really cool to watch them kind of bet on themselves and see it pay off. They ended up
I'm
winning that match, and they're moving on to the next round.
I'm really glad to hear they kind of got there fast. Like I feel like we were talking about them like right before we went on like our mini break. So for them to like what's the word? I guess accelerate their TV debut like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's super dope. And for them to debut with like a big win in a good match, and not only their big tournament, but against two pretty big cruiserweights, very happy for them. That's super dope. So like I feel like I might have asked this when we first talked about it, but I forget. Did the third guy get signed too? I hate that. I feel bad that I can't remember his name, but
Trey is still an Impact.
Trey.
Last I checked.
Okay. Well, at least two-thirds of the Rascals are killing NXT already. So actually, another question I have. Looking at, it's probably too early to even tell by now, but like looking at their first match, does it look like their style is toned down now by any chance, or is it just like watching them in Impact all over again?
Oh yeah, no, it's a continuation of their Impact stuff. It's so cool. They've come in, and WWE, to its credit, hasn't tried to change their style at all, hasn't tried to change anything about their presentation. They're still hard hitting, solid guys, and just able to go out there and perform. Obviously, the treehouse is dead. They're not smoking weed anymore. But I mean, no one ever thought they were going to continue smoking weed in the WWE. Well, I mean, Matt Riddle is there, so who knows? But yeah, so they were able to keep their style, and they're still. It was four flippy boys doing flippy boy shit, and it was so good.
I'm glad to hear that, and I'm glad they get to just be themselves on like a big stage. Hopefully, it stays that way because WWE has a weird habit of like letting guys be themselves in NXT, but then when it's time for the call up, okay, Keith Lee, you gotta wear a leotard now, and like it's
Mhm.
weird choices like that. So hopefully, Des and Wentz are still Des and Wentz by the time they're killing it at WrestleMania.
Absolutely, and I just double checked for you. Trey is still active in Impact Wrestling, so he ended up re-signing. Dez and Wentz ended up going on their own, which he actually tweeted out last night during their match, a GIF of the three of them hugging after I think Hard to Kill this year, and it was just proud with a heart. So that was really sweet.
Nice.
All right, and the final match of the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic opening round saw the Undisputed Era facing off against Breezango. Undisputed Era won this. No one thought Breezango was going to pull out this W. They won it. This was my favorite Undisputed Era match in a very long time. I got kind of over their tag team style when it seemed like they were choke holding the belts after Viking Raiders left, and they were just kind of batting away any challenger and not allowing any other team to kind of build any sort of notoriety inside the division. But this was a really good, solid match. Breezango have kind of shifted away from their comedy stuff. Like they still do the comedic entrances, but once they're in the ring, they are in the ring. It's not like on Raw where Fandango would get distracted by someone's outfit in the crowd and then go and start writing them a ticket on those like rare moments where they were actually wrestling on TV. This was really, really solid and a good way to end the show. So right now the teams that have advanced are the Undisputed Era, MSK, formerly known as the Rascals, and the Grizzled Young Veterans.
Okay, which two people in Undisputed Era represented?
This was Adam Cole and Roderick Strong. So it was
Oh,
the
Adam
the
Cole and
typical,
Roger
yeah.
Strong.
So it was that typical makeup because it does seem like KOR and Fish work together a lot, and then Adam Cole and Strong work together a lot, but Strong doesn't usually mix with those other two guys.
They usually have KOR and Fish or KOR and Strawn, but I've seen them do Cole and Strawn a few times. It's not my favorite pairing, but they're good together, so it works sometimes.
Yeah, Adam Cole being in a tag match for Undisputed Era always feels weird because he is such a dominant presence and he is very clearly the shot caller that it's like, okay, so you're going to get the pin. We know you're going to get the pin because they're going to take him down and then roll out your way, and that's fine. And so it takes a little bit of like the, oh, hell yeah, out of the match for me. But like I said, this was actually a pretty solid Undisputed Era match, and the first one that I've seen of them in probably the last year that I was like, oh, okay, that was really good.
Yeah, and I'm glad they're at least doing something different with Adam Cole. It's like, because like we were talking about a while back, what else can Undisputed Era do in NXT, especially Cole being like longest reigning NXT champion, won all the belts, had all the main event singles feuds. So tag team thing is different at least for him.
Yeah, my thought is after this, they'll end up sending him to 205 to get eyes back on 205 because I know one person who watches 205, but she watches everything that WWE puts out, like
Uh,
everything. She watches the bump on a daily basis.
I'll be completely honest. I completely forgot 205 Live was even a thing. I might have thought they actually took it off the air, to be honest. And I say that as like a big like 205 Live mark. Like I used to love it back in the day.
Oh, I wrote a piece for the website I worked for before you hired me that was RIP 205. We barely knew ye because there were rumors that it was being pulled off the air for like the 6th time. And that was the last piece I wrote for that guy. I wrote a whole like 205 was great and it sucks that it's going away. And then like the day I left after it got posted, it was like, hey, 205 is here to stay. I'm like, son of a bitch. Okay, cool. I'm starting new with someone else. That's fine.
I think I remember that one. Like I feel like that might have
I
been a
sent that
piece
to you
for.
as like part of my application to come work for the website of like, see, I can write good. I write words good. I promise.
That's why I can remember it so well. It was a really good piece from what I remember.
Well, if you have time, go to the Wrestling Estate, look my name up, and read a piece about how 205 Live died way too young a year and a half ago when it didn't end up dying. But that'll bring us to AEW, and AEW was by far the best show of the week. So the episode opens up with Pac and Eddie Kingston facing off. They have an insane match. Pac ends up picking up the pin, and both guys' factions are kind of down at the ring apron, just staring at each other, just like waiting for someone to make that first move so that they can just go in and brawl. Because if you remember, Kingston had kind of absorbed Murder Triangle, which is Pac's faction, while Pac was overseas because of COVID. Once Pac was able to return, he got the Lucha Brothers back on his own side, and now they're kind of at war with each other. So around the time that it looks like Kingston's going to be the one to throw the first punch and kind of go into an all-out warfare, Lance Archer's music hits. Lance Archer comes down and chases off Pac and his guys, and you're like, oh, or Eddie Kingston and his guys. I'm sorry, not Pac. And you're like, oh, okay, maybe Lance Archer's working with Pac. That's odd. That's a weird booking decision. But then it shows Pac's face, and he's pissed. Like he did not want Lance Archer out there. He did not want anyone to interfere. So they're not on the same page. They're not working together. Pac just wanted to make, or Eddie, goodness gracious, Lance Archer just wanted to make his presence felt and let Pac know that while Eddie Kingston wasn't scared of Pac, Eddie Kingston is scared of Lance Archer. So I think we're leading up to at the next AEW pay-per-view, we're going to get Pac versus Lance Archer, which is going to be crazy and super, super cool.
Yeah, yeah. I always love dynamics like that where it's like the little flippy guy. Well, Pax hasn't been the flippy guy in a minute, but I guess the cruiserweight guy versus the big hulking obstacle in his way, like that David versus Goliath thing. Like it's tale as old as wrestling, really, or tale as old as the Bible, I should probably say, since it's David and Goliath. But
I mean, wrestling outdates the Bible by quite a few years, to be honest.
does it?
Oh yeah.
You're gonna have to send me an article like talking about that because I'm intrigued now. But I don't want to waste time by like asking all these questions now. Because now I got questions. But yeah, like dynamics like that are always super fun to see, and a dynamic between someone like Pac with his style and someone like Archer who loves to fling people around. I think that could be a show stealer, to be honest. And I'm also curious to see how this feud alliance thing, Zudo alliance thing, works with Eddie Kingston's stable and how that works.
Yeah, no, it's going to be really interesting to see if it's a situation where, Lance Archer's just using the fact that Eddie Kingston is scared of him as a way of like calling Pac out and getting himself a match on a big pay-per-view, because I don't think he's had a pay-per-view match since he debuted with AEW, or at least not a like main event. Because I know he fought Cody during Double or Nothing, but I don't think that was a main event fight.
Mm.
But it could just be his way of like using that relationship as a way to like excel himself into that main event picture, which would be really cool. And it could just be he was bored and wanted to screw with people, so he went out there and he just fucked up Pac's night, which would also be a really funny reason to have a match. Is like, hey, why'd you do that? Oh no, I had nothing on the card, so I said fuck it, and I got out there and I fucked up your night. And what are you gonna do about it? You gonna come talk to me about it? You gonna be a man? You gonna get in the ring about it? You want to fight about it? And then that sets up that being the only reason they're having a match at a major pay-per-view would be hilarious, and they would still kill that match, and I would love it so much. Because sometimes when you have year 2, year 3, year stories, there's no fun in the match because you're waiting for the ending of the story. You're waiting for the end of the book. And if this is just like, I don't like you, so I fucked with your night. Oh, you want to punch me? Oh, okay, punch me on Sunday. I think that would be great.
I agree. Like something, a pay reason like that is something I can totally get behind, especially if it's sometimes just need like simple stories in wrestling. Like you love like the very complex storylines, but sometimes if a feud just starts with just, yeah, I didn't have anything better to do, I just want to get booked on the card, want to fight about it. That's
Mm.
that's that's a fun reason to fight, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And it's such a change of pace from the way American wrestling is booked now that if it's literally just like, oh, I had nothing better going on, so I figured, fuck it. You seem like a guy I could punch in the face and it'd be fine, so okay. Like, I would genuinely love that booking decision and I would praise it from the rooftops. It would be so good. But that'll bring us to our next match on the card, which was Kenny Omega, Carl Anderson, and Doc Gallows, Bullet Club OG, which isn't actually Bullet Club OG because Carl Anderson and Doc Gallows left the Bullet Club when Kenny Omega became the leader of the Bullet Club. But still, Bullet Club, whatever. Facing off against Brian Pillman Jr., Griff Garrison, and Danny Limelight. Pillman Jr., Garrison, and Limelight have been like mainstays on AEW Dark for the last like year. Junior, when MLW kind of shut down and released everyone from their contracts to go do what they want or stay with MLW, he made the jump over to AEW and has been killing it on AEW Dark. Garrison and Danny Limelight are really, really solid guys. They're really good workers. This was not the match to watch either of those two guys be really good workers. This was a squash. It was just a very big, like, Kenny Omega, Carl Anderson, and Doc Gallows are unbeatable. They're insanely talented, and you will not come close to them. The biggest part of this match that was cool was that it was Kenny Omega, Carl Anderson, and Doc Gallows in a ring together. That was the whole point of this match, was just to be like, yeah, these three guys, you remember when they were doing that thing over there for a couple of years? They can do it here too. They can do it here too, guys. Yeah. And all of that. After that match, John Moxley came out to confront Omega and the Good Brothers. Moxley eventually falls victim to the numbers game, so he comes in and he's just all piss and vinegar and he's ready to fight. And obviously, three guys versus one guy, that doesn't go his way. So he's starting to get beat down. Strangely enough, the Lucha Brothers come in and make the save. Lucha Brothers and John Moxley haven't really interacted with each other. They don't have any kind of like previous history on the indies or anything like that. It could just be that Phoenix lost the world title match to Omega last week, and that's why they're coming in to make the save, because, oh, you don't like him, we don't like him either. Let's do that, which if that's as simple as that story is going to be, that's also fine by me. Not everything needs 6 degrees of separation. So where was I? The Lucha Brothers come in to make the save. Moxley and Omega are brawling outside of the ring until the staff separates them. The Young Bucks are like out there trying to calm everything down, trying to get everybody separated, trying to play the cooler heads that they were in the Bullet Club over in Japan, kind of like the good Christian boys who happen to be Gaijin and therefore evil. doing that whole thing. So around the time that they're kind of out there trying to get everybody separated, the Lucha Brothers kind of zero back in and realize, oh, hey, we really don't like you guys. And they just beat the shit out of the Young Bucks. And while they're doing that, Omega and Callis use that as their time to kind of escape. So Young Bucks are getting beat down on ringside, and Omega and Callis are up the ramp and out of there, and out of harm's way.
Well, I just realized, where's Cody during all this?
That's the thing. Cody has not made his presence clear here. He didn't come out during the Too Sweet last week. He hasn't been involved with any of the Bullet Club USA stuff that they've been doing, so we're not really sure where Cody is or where his affiliations lie. I'm assuming we're going to get that story in the next couple of weeks, but I don't know. That's a good question and one that I unfortunately don't have an answer to at this time.
I guess maybe that's part of the intrigue. Like, you want to know, the more they hide Cody away, the more you want to know where he is and which side of the fence he lies. So I guess that's smart booking in that regard.
Yeah, and the thing that's interesting about this is, like, all respect to those three guys, Omega and the Young Bucks needed the Bullet Club. They needed that, like, faction warfare. They needed that thing to get them back on that main stage, that like top act kind of thing. Hangman Page and Cody in AEW don't really need that. Hangman Page is the most over babyface in that company, and he's not even really a babyface. And Cody Rhodes is Cody fucking Rhodes. As long as he's on TNT, he's gonna be the most over guy in the building. So they kind of had outgrown the need for Bullet Club and the need for the Elite, whereas the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, especially with the lack of solid matches coming from them since AEW's debut almost 2 years ago now, they really, really needed this, like, hey, remember, nostalgia kind of kick in the ass to get back up to that main event. So it could be that they're just there to enhance those three guys' careers, and Cody and Hangman be damned. All right. And the next match was the NWA Women's World Title, which is the champion Serena Deeb facing off against Ty Conti. Now, Ty Conti, obviously former NXT member, kind of made that big jump. Was one of the first big defectors from NXT to AEW. Serena Deeb looked great in this match. It's very clear why the NWA has that title on her and why they have trust in her and faith in her. Ty Conti, on the other hand, is very clearly the star of this match, even in a losing effort. She looks fantastic. She's working great. She's got so much more confidence in her ability than she did a year ago when she made her debut. It's really, really clear to me from watching this match that AEW has every bit of faith in her and her ability, and has every plan in making her a star as soon as they can. This was a fantastic match.
I'm really glad to hear that. 'Cause, like, I remember in NXT, she was always someone who had like a ton of potential, but they just weren't using her at all, unfortunately. And I think maybe her in-ring ability may have suffered because of it, just because at best they started just using her in like these 2-3 minute squash matches, where when instead, like in the Mae Young Classic, first two Mae Young Classics, I think she had really good outings, like 10-15 minutes against, it was mostly just more like homegrown talent opposed to like the indie talent they were bringing in. But like, she was super impressive. But like, the fact that she's regained her confidence and the fact she's got free range to just show all of that ability that was basically, for lack of a better word, being wasted in her latter half of her NXT career, I'm super glad for her there.
Absolutely. It's really cool to see someone kind of get to that mountaintop and then realize that there are peaks just above, just around the horizon, and kind of keep moving, and just find that next place and even excel even more there. Now, what's going to be really cool is now that the NWA is back to doing full shows on YouTube again, we'll eventually, hopefully, start seeing these AEW talents that are, challenging for the NWA title, making their way over to the NWA programming, and more NWA programming talents make their way over to AEW.
Hopefully, it would just make sense, especially now with them basically integrating other companies like Impact guys, NWA guys. It only makes sense to, and of course, like after spending a whole summer bringing in NWA talent, it only makes sense for AEW to basically return the favor by putting some more eyes on NWA by having, say, the AEW Women's Champion, which I think is still Hikaru Shida. Is that correct?
Yeah, Shida is still holding the AEW Women's Championship.
Yeah, like people like her who can help bolster NWA's views on YouTube, hopefully.
Yeah, no, definitely, and it's one of those where a lot of people's criticism of AEW right now is why does the NWA World's Women's Championship get more TV time than the AEW Women's World Championship? And unfortunately, the answer to that is the NWA Women's World Championship just means more at this point. It's their world title, the AEW Women's Championship, but they've had 3 champions and they haven't put any time into it, so no one cares. But the NWA Women's World Championship is 40 years old at this point and has had some of the best women's wrestlers in the world hold it, and is something that people will tune in to see. So that's why they do it the way they do. And hopefully they're able to kind of transition into putting their world championship in that place. But at least we're getting women featured on a main card on a Wednesday night on television. All right, and that brings us to our final match of the night, which was Darby Allin, the AEW TNT title holder, facing off against Brian Cage for that title. Brian is obviously the bigger, stronger, less agile guy, but Darby is really holding his own. He's just keeping him at bay. He's hitting him with the lucky strike and just using his agility and his quickness to kind of stay out of range of Brian Cage. That all kind of starts to shift though when Ricky Starks comes down and starts trying to like grab Darby Allin and hold him still for Cage. Around the time that Starks actually gets him in a hold and Cage is starting to advance across the ring to just lay into him, all the lights go out. All the lights go out, all the lights come back up, and it's Sting! Oh my god, Sting's been back. It doesn't matter. Sting has been back. Sting appears chasing off Starks with the baseball bat and everything. So it looks like we are officially getting Vigilante Sting. The important part of this is, though, that using that distraction, Darby is able to roll up Cage and retain his TNT title. So Darby Allin, the TNT champion, has pinned Brian Cage, the FTW champion, and I don't know that that title is going to change hands because that title was never officially put up for grabs, but Darby has a claim to that title if he wants that title shot in the future.
I'm very curious to see what this means for like Sting going for. I don't imagine he's gonna be wrestling, but do you think that there's a future for like Sting having another match?
I think if he has another match, he'll do it so that he can be listed as an active wrestler and be part of the inaugural AEW like what's it called, Hall of Fame class that has been kind of rumored to be coming at All Out. So there's a rumor right now that Brody Lee is going to be the first ever inaugural member of the well, not the first ever, the inaugural member of the AEW Hall of Fame. Now, if they're able to induct Sting and kind of give him that honor of being in, I believe, 3 Hall of Fames now, because he's in the Impact Hall of Fame. Did he ever make the WWE Hall of Fame?
Yep, I think it might have been like a year after he retired. He went.
Okay. So he would be in the AEW Hall of Fame, the Impact Wrestling Hall of Fame, and the WWE Hall of Fame, and the only and I believe he's in the Cauliflower Alley as well. So he'd be the only wrestler in 4 recognized Hall of Fames right now, which would be a huge moment for him in his career, and I think a really cool way of being like, we're not just giving it to Brody Lee because he died, we're giving it to Brody Lee because he deserved it, because obviously Sting deserves it and Sting's getting it as well. I think that'd be a really cool way to do that, and that way they can say he was active and then put him in that Hall of Fame.
That would make sense. And just on that note, that was my first time hearing that rumor, so I think it's a super classy thing to just create their Hall of Fame and have Brody Lee be the first inductee. That's super classy. I love that.
And I do want to make sure that's clear that it hasn't been confirmed that that's what's happening, but that's kind of the understood rumor around the internet, is that that's kind of where that's going to go, is being that All Out is their version of WrestleMania. We're going to get the AEW Hall of Fame and get that moving in that direction.
Right. That's what I should have said. Like if it's true, then it's super classy, and I love that decision.
Absolutely. And that'll actually bring us to the end of our show. So that means it's time for the Indie Wrestling Spotlight. Obviously, I watch a lot of wrestling. You just listen to me talk about it for an hour and 20 minutes. I watch a lot of indie wrestling as well. My pick for what you should go out and seek out and watch this week is No Peace Underground's Memento Mori. This is another hardcore wrestling card. I'm a hardcore wrestling guy. We had a couple of really insane matches on this card. We had Masada, the like OG hardcore legend, early CZW guy, early GCW guy, just an all-around like legend in that business, facing off against RSP, who is made his name in the last like 5 years as the new face of hardcore wrestling. We also had Atticus Cougar facing off against Shane Mercer. We had the newest face in hardcore wrestling, Akira, making his appearance for this. And then what was the most important match on this card that you should absolutely go see is the H2O Danny Havoc hardcore title was up for grabs between Bam Sullivan, the champion, and Orin Veidt. So Danny Havoc obviously died in, I believe, 2019, and H2O ended up renaming their hardcore title after him in memoriam. And this is a defense of that title, and I just think it's a very cool gesture. And on top of that, it was a great match. It was a no-ring death match, which those two guys are very, very good at.
And I guess this is also my time to do my long-winded titled segments. Is now a good time to get back into wrestling? And I'd give a resounding yes. And I'd say a resounding yes for, you probably gonna call me crazy for saying this, but for WWE, because it's Royal Rumble season, and I feel like Royal Rumble is a good place to start if not for new fans, then at the very least for old fans who haven't gotten into it, because then you'd see a lot of old faces coming in for that cameo spot here and there. It's like, oh, it's such and such, Hall of Famer such and such, and then you get the big pop there. And on top of that, you also get seeds planted for the future, namely seeds planted for WrestleMania. So if you're into seeing all the old stuff, reliving all these old characters all over again, and you're digging what you're seeing, you can definitely set yourself for saying, "Oh, I could check out WrestleMania this year." Nothing else. Let me see if I can get back into this full swing. Mania season in general is, I think, a good time to get back into it. It's like if you're not a super huge football fan, you're gonna want to see Super Bowl with your friends, or if you're not an active basketball fan, you're probably gonna see a little bit of the playoffs. It's just a good entry to just get back into it without needing that long-term investment. So I'd say get back into it for the sake of Rumble season.
Absolutely agree. The Rumble is my favorite event of the year, and you never know what's going to happen. I don't think we're going to get an Edge return again this year because he already made his return. But, we haven't seen him in a couple of months. We might get another Edge return. Who knows? But with that all being said, thank you all so much for tuning in today. Don't forget, you can follow me on Twitter at Gladen, Sam. You want to spell out that comma, and you can read my coverage of all things pro wrestling and mixed martial arts at Daily DDT and Fansided respective.
And do you like bad tweets? Do you like bad photos? Well, you're in luck, because now you can follow me at WhamBamBisJam on Twitter and Instagram. You can also check out more podcasts under this umbrella at upliftunited.com, which also includes this podcast and my solo podcast, Mental Health Check-In Podcast, all about mental health awareness. And speaking of Uplift United, we have a new Patreon and a Ko-fi page. So if you want to subscribe for a spare $1, a spare $5, or if you're being super generous, a spare $10, you can subscribe to the Patreon. Or if you just want to just donate something really fast to just support people in the umbrella, you could just donate directly, just a short sum over on Kofi. But either way, all the funds are going to people in this podcast network, and just to gives me a way to just pay them without having the funds to like pay them a whole lot. So like you help me put money in people's pockets. So if you love what we do, put some money in Sam's pocket. Donate to the
Hey.
Patreon or Kofi.
Absolutely. Don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at LAPSEDGRAPS. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a rating and a review. It really seriously helps us out. And as always, don't forget, we out.
We out.
I tried doing that without the script and I flubbed it masterfully. But screw it, we're leaving it in. Have a good night.